Welcome to the Plastic Plesiosaur podcast.
We are your hosts, Trey the Explainer,
and me, Miles Greb.
A podcast about the natural world,
things that people claim are part of the natural world,
and things that used to be.
Okay, Trey, we are back with another episode, and this one is a special one, my friend.
Yes, it's a special hour and 30-minute long episode of Monster Quest. They got an extra 30 minutes here for us of worth of investigation.
We won't have any extra stories this time because we got to dig deep into one of the core foundational cryptids, the Yeti. And Monster Quest had an hour and a half long episode on this guy where I think, we talked about some of the new Monster Quest show last time, right? And how they just are just telling stories with a bunch of AI videos and are actually questing. And this episode, for what it's worth, they do quest. They do try. We'll talk about how successful that try is. But, they get out there and, they do their best.
Yes. And this is a big cryptid, this is one of the most famous cryptids,
Yeah, it's about 6 to 8 foot tall. So
the big gosh darn it, Miles, you're always super sharp. You're always more sharp than me. You're always able to make a quip faster than I can think it. Gosh darn. I was there's the big three, right? There's Bigfoot, there's Loch Ness Monster, there's Yeti, and Abominable Snowman shows up in movies, right? You get Monsters Inc. He shows up in there.
That's right. Yellow Snow Joke, even.
Yellow Snow Joke. So yeah, it's I guess I understand why they invested so much, and they don't return to the Yeti either, right? It's not like Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster where they come back to it. They're actually, we're not done with it. Actually, there's a little bit more questing. But yeah, we have a special guest today too, right?
Yeah. You want to introduce yourself?
Drum roll. Hello. Hi.
Oh, hey.
Hello. My name's Darren. And Darren Naish. Yeah, that's me. And thank you very much for having me. Look forward to talking to both of you.
It's an honor to be here. It's great to have you on the show. We had you on for the Greenland shark episode last time, which was kind of a random one for you, but we do them in order, and you were available, so that's what it was.
Yes, and Yetis. Who doesn't? If you know a bit about monsters, a bit about cryptozoology, you're almost destined to know a set of things about the Yeti.
Yeah,
I have to say that I always feel guilty for there's a set of things about the Yeti that I don't know, and every single time I go and try and find out about it, the actual origins, this peculiar crossover of mountaineering history and Europeans desperately wanting to go to the, using the Yeti legend as kind of like a hook to inspire interest.
Yeah.
Alleged sightings that start very, very late in Victorian times, pretty close to 1900. And then the whole theosophy, mysticism, Orientalism, kind of sort of spiritualist take on the Yeti. So where does it actually, it's like the vision of what the Yeti's meant to be like from the Western flesh and blood culture. When does that actually come in? I think that's really hard to pin down. And that's the thing that I always feel guilty about. I wish I should know more about that. And I don't.
Well, it's difficult, as we'll get into. A lot of people try to be like, well, this is the origin of the Yeti. It comes from this culture or this word, or it's translated as this. But actually, it's so many things.
It's even murkier than Bigfoot. Bigfoot's pretty murky already, or Sasquatch, where you go to look at where does the origin of the word come from, and Yeti's even worse. Maybe it's the remoteness of the region or something like that.
Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of Yetis, aren't there? So there's the Yeti is supposed to be. There's 3 or 4 Tibetan terms, Zute Mete, and another one, I think it's begins with P, and the Yeti is meant to be kind of a corruption of the middle one of those. So there's kind of this this vague set of terms that describe very vaguely defined animals of differing sizes, and it's not clear what they are, and certainly in the ancient lore and paintings on monastery walls and stuff, they are not depicting a hominid. They're not depicting the classic Yeti that we air quotes believe in today. It's more kind of like a vague bear-like predator that might be capable of bipedality. And yeah, so like yeah, I think it's the as is common for so many cryptids, the flesh and blood version of it that's been is now canonical in cryptozoology. Is made real by Hoovermans and whatnot in the 50s.
Mm.
That's a specific an extraction of a specific part of a larger and blurrier, more nebulous lore.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think we have largely two different spheres of influence, right? We have like this sphere of influence, which is like the Himalayan people and the people like down towards the valley that have their traditions and cultures of different wild and hairy man stories or like trickster men stories, which are common throughout the world. Like even like down the valley, but you have the Nanaku stories, right? Which are like these they're almost like Looney Tune type characters. They're like these large, hairy people that do things like the opposite of humans, right? They have all these stories we can get into later. Or you go up the mountain, we have a lot of the folklore that you just mentioned, and then you have the separate sphere, which is like the post-Darwinian European. Let's go into the unknown and discover animals, and if there's any hints of stories, they probably point to flesh and blood creatures that we can find and discover, and it's like this shrinking land of the lost type escapade to
Mm.
explore the unknown. And as they come in contact with the culture from the first sphere, they want to, what I always call retrofitting those cultural stories into this post-Darwinian, like look into the unknown. And so it gets messy because that first sphere influence is wide and folklorish, and they aren't actually talking about the same kind of thing. And so you have this, oh, these people talk about the Yeti, but it's like, what Yeti? What does that mean? There isn't one Yeti and there never was.
Yes.
Like it blew my mind realizing that Yetis, like even see that's the thing is there's so many different types of Yetis. There's like the pop culture Yeti too, that is like a white a white furred creature, and it's just like nothing support. Like there's no like actual like sources that support like a
The
white Yeti.
Rankin Bass Yeti.
Yeah,
Yes,
which
Is that
yes.
is that the
massive
term I
Rankin Bass
mean?
fan. Glad that had some impact on cryptozoology.
Is that the right? Am I thinking of the right? I'm thinking of the Rudolph.
Yep, that's Rankin Bass. They
That is
they
Rankin.
did the
Yes.
the Christmas specials as well as Last Unicorn and The Hobbit and everything.
There you go. That's
So
that one. Yeah. Because I think I've seen it said it might be in the Loxton and Prothero Abominable Science. So
Mm.
someone somewhere has said that like there is no that's a hairy snow beast, white snow beast version of the Yeti until some specific
yeah,
yeah
it's in a
eclipse date.
so like the Donald Duck comics are more popular in Europe than America, and he is in one of those early, but it is actually post the Rack and Bass one. So it's
Yeah.
somewhat probable that the Rack and Bass one did originate. It's often cited. I could imagine like the art direction making the thing white because it is in the
Because
snow.
of the snowman. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I could imagine it happening before, and then the Rack and Bass one is the first major one. I'm sure if someone did some hard research, they might find it, but it is often cited as the first major successful like white Yeti in pop culture. So
Yeah.
because you're right, Darren. Darren, I was rereading your book. I think it was uh, Hunting Monsters. It might have been
Hmm.
Hunting Monsters, or it might have been the one that you co-wrote with Kozman and
Oh yeah,
Conway.
cryptozoological. Yeah.
And yeah, you point out that there really isn't a Yeti isn't a Tibetan word. It's like this weird corruption, and there's in like the language there's you said them. There's duste or duste, like a big reddish predator, probably a bear. Mate, a small, more human-like creature, and then there's like another word that is like miche, like man bear.
Mm.
Um, so there's all these like different words, and then like Westerners seem to have come in and been like, well, all these words mean Yeti, yeah, or like abominable snowman. Um,
Or that it's different species, and there's at least three different species, which I know. I think in Hooverman's 1986 list, he says, well, these kinds of creatures. There's. I mean, how many terms are there for vaguely human-like wild man type, hairy beasts? There's thousands of terms,
oh yeah.
and he comes along and says that I can't remember off the top of my head, but he'll say stuff like, "Oh, the Chimose and the Migwai of Myanmar are clearly the same animal as the Zute of Nepal and Tibet, which is the same as the Almasti of China, but then the bagua of Malaysia is the same as the Nichapoi of northern India, which is the same as the orang dalim of Bangladesh. It's like, I'm not sure that we've actually got enough, sort of very specific, the bits of information you would need to really connect the dots in that way, Bernard Hoovermans. So, yes, that's a big part of it, isn't it? It's like this dramatic statement of confidence.
Because you're
Linking
right.
some
I'm
of these.
like thinking of if somebody did this to like European folklore or something. They're like goblins and ogres and trolls and pixies are all the same species, like same species or something like that.
Charles Paxton, who's best known for his research on sea and lake monsters, he wrote an article at one point saying that there was I think he called it like the D&D effect, the Dungeons and Dragons effect, where like there's an approach to, yeah, again, these like poorly defined sort of monsters, an attempt to say, that one has got this specific, in D&D there's like, it's fighting strength and it's kill power and it's vital stats, like as if you can say that for each one of these with confidence, and if it's not already clear, you totally can't. So yeah.
Well, they do this thing where they just try to collect as much things that could possibly point to it as possible, and then if you have enough in that collection, that must be some kind of evidence.
There must be some type of core in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
for all.
but junk in, junk out. But they didn't learn that. Yeah, because like even like Monster Quest does this a lot, and obviously cryptozoology has done this the whole time. They'll be like, oh, here's a sighting of a 5 foot tall orange upright creature, and here's a sighting of a 9 foot tall gray colored creature. One of them was killing a yak, and the other one's known vegetarian that rips off trees and eats the bark. And those are both examples of a sighting, and are both like confirming that there's some kind of ape man. And it's like, well, these are pretty distinctive sounding creatures to me. And then they'll come back with, oh, maybe they're two species. So like, okay, so now you're saying that there's two unknown ape species in this region. And it's like, I don't know. It asks for a lot. But when we get into the Yeti Trey,
Yes.
that what I like to do is try to tell stories in order. I always think it's pretty interesting because a lot of times you're born in the 20th century. At some point, you already have a lot of the cultural take of this thing's real. Pop culture storytellers have gotten a hold of it. Whatever is the most mimetic becomes sticky, and it develops its like persona and its apologetics over time. But if you look at things kind of in the timeline, you can kind of see, well, hey, this doesn't add up, or it adds up in an interesting way. And
Yeah.
there's a possible really early hit in this timeline that is
Yeah.
a very very a Trey based hit. So I
You
thought
you,
maybe
you
we
hit
want
me up as soon as you found this, and I was like, "This is like the most me thing I've ever
yeah
seen."
yeah. I was like, well, Trey has to tell this part of the story.
I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, yeah, there's a claim. So they're like on some websites. I actually found many sources making this claim too. I saw NBC News. I saw the Smithsonian Magazine. I saw Life Science. I saw National Geographic making this claim that the earliest, like the oldest sighting of the Yeti or encounter with Yetis can be traced to Alexander the Great. That Alex,
Darren laughs in the background.
we'll get to.
Have you heard this, Darren?
Say again.
Have you heard this story?
I don't know.
Oh, well,
No,
awesome.
no, continue.
I hadn't heard it until Miles sent it to me like a couple months ago, which is surprising because it seems like it would be right on my alley. But it's such a bad claim that I think not even major cryptozoologists believe it. But I'll get into that. Yes, there is a claim that popular science magazines and websites quote a lot, just when they're in randomly too, when they're talking about like Yeti hair samples or something, like the developing story, they'll mention that like, yes, the oldest version of this is recorded by Alexander the Great, where the story goes, and it's very vague and weird in some of the sources, where it's like when Alexander the Great was crossing, he was invading India, and he was crossing the Hindu Kush. He demanded to see a Yeti, like he had heard about the Yetis from locals, and the locals captured a Yeti and then like brought it to him, but then it died because it was it didn't like the environment or something like that. Like it got sick. And when I heard this, I was like, huh? I was like, I've never heard that. And I'm like a big like Alexander the Great nerd. Like I've read all the historical sources on it, and I've like just straight up never heard the story. So I was like, where are they getting this? Because there's nothing that like resembles it either. So like I was there's like only like a handful of ancient histories surviving of like the life of Alexander the Great, so it's kind of easy to be like a completionist and like read through all of them and know what happens. Um, and so like I've done that, and I was like, that's not in there. So I was like, maybe this is like coming from the weird medieval legends of Alexander. There's like things called like the Alexander Romance, which were like these stories written in like early Middle Ages to and sometimes to late Middle Ages that were you that like are basically like King Arthur like tales of like Alexander the Great's life that are like really weird, and like have him going up into heaven by like riding a griffin and like fighting giant crabs and stuff.
Hell
Like
yeah,
it's totally like fantasy. It's like Conan kind of like stuff. And I was like, maybe it's in there. But as it turns out, like I found the source, and the source is like everybody is apparently quoting this one blog, this one like what is it called? Let me see. Let me find this guy so I can call him out here. History News Network, this like random blog that people are quoting. Like National Geographic apparently quoted, and then NBC, Smithsonian, and Life Science quoted National Geographic. So like you have people not really checking on like the source, and the history news network like quotes it and talks about like how they capture like in one of the in Arian's history, like one of the five histories of Alexander, they captured these feral like wild men that have like long nails and like teeth and are hairy and stuff. And I was like,
I have the caption if you want me to read it.
I have it here too,
Okay.
and I was like, oh, I know what they're talking about. Like as soon as I read that, I was like, I know what they're talking about. Like the reason I didn't click is because like none of the version of the story that's gotten out is like where is what is actually recorded in Arian's like Anabasis of Alexander,
This
where
reminds me, Trey, of like the Moby Dick story we did, where everybody quoted the Mocha Dick story, then nobody looked at the primary source.
yes,
And
nobody looks at the primary sources.
all these YouTube videos, Nat Geo, everybody just quotes the thing, and nobody like the source is there. Go look at the source. I don't understand. It's crazy.
People are so lazy. Like that's the thing is like I realize that people are like even like life science writers, like people that I'd assume have some background in I don't know, they went to get their bachelor's or something to so they could write about scientific stories. Just like they don't bother looking into it. They got deadlines to meet. They got deadlines to meet. It's lazy.
What does it say, Trey?
It's okay. So first of all, the incident in it is it's okay. Here's the three things. It does not occur in the Hindu Kush, so I don't know how that aspect wrinkle got in the story. It doesn't even involve Alexander, and then they're not Yetis. So like so here's the thing. And so Arian's history of Alexander, it quotes a lot of lost histories. Like that's the thing is all our histories of Alexander are just quotations of other people's histories. There's no really contemporary account that survives. So like Arian's is like this hodgepodge of all these histories that are now lost to us. So he is quoting Nearchus's Indica, which is a book that was written by Nearchus, who was Alexander the Great's like admiral and one of like the few generals to survive like the successor wars and to like sit down and write a history. So he's like a very like in the ancient world, he's treated as like a very great source on the life of Alexander, in particular, like India itself. Like later Roman historians quote him a lot, like that this type of plant is grown in India, or this the kings in India are this, and the kingdoms look like this, like that type of stuff. So Arian is quoting his voyage back, where they're following the coastline, um, and on the coastline of like modern day Pakistan, there's like a barren stretch that Nearchus says is inhabited by a people called like the ichthyophagi, the fish eaters, and like and you'd see it on old maps that because the world was not really well known, they would just label this region as like fish eater region. And so yes, I'll narrate what he says here about the fish eaters. They got past the country of the fish eaters The fish eaters live on fish, and hence their name. Only a few of them fish. Like, yeah, very creative name. Oh,
Yeah.
and for the most part, yeah, they have boat. They only have a few proper boats. They have any skill. They have skill of catching fish. And here's the thing: is like they eat them raw, just as they take them from the water. They dry them in the sun till they're quite like soft, and then pound them into flour to make bread from them. They feed these fish cakes to everything. Their flocks are fed on fish. The country has no meadows and produces no grass. Those of them who inhabit the desert parts of the country, treeless as it is, and with no cultivated parts, find all their sustenance in this fishing. I'll keep going. Yeah, here's like an interesting part. The richest among them have built huts. They collect the bones of any large fish which the sea casts up and use them to in place of beams. Doors that make them doors they make from any flat bones which they pick up. But the greater part of them and the poorest sort have huts made of the fish's backbones. So you can kind of like see that this is not a Yeti, you know, these are very
No.
clearly not Yeti. These are a people that Nearchus encountered in a very remote part of the world, a barren stretch of the world that rely solely on fishing, and because
So
yeah,
the one passage that they like to point out a lot is 24.9, when it says, those captured were hairy, not only on their heads, but the rest of their bodies. Their nails are rather like beast claws, and they used their nails, according to reports, as if they were iron tools. When they tore asunder their fishes and even their less solid kinds of wood, everything else was cleft with sharp stones. For iron they did not possess. Their clothing they wore skins of animals, some even the skins of their larger fishes.
yes, yeah. So there, yeah, like that's where people like that was the misquotation where somebody has taken that quote and removed the aspects of it that talk
Yeah.
about like animal skins, and then mention like huts and tools where they use like nets and fishing tools and stuff. And they take the hairy all over, and they're like, oh, that means they must have like
Yeah.
long hair, but maybe they're
Well,
just like
and
particularly hairy, you know.
and then past this era, even in the Monster Quest themselves, they show a lot of the tapestries, like different Himalayan culture tapestries, and they show the creatures on there that they call Yeti, and they often have tools. They'll sometimes be dressed and have different weapons or holding skulls and stuff, and they call those Yetis. But that's really not the creature that people seem to look for or think might be real.
Yeah.
So
So to try and to make Yetis out of that ichthyophagy account is very odd, because the supposed Yetiness there is the least important of the traits, right?
Right.
Like
The fact that
hairiness
they
and
eat fish, you know.
eating fish, yeah, and like build huts out of. I mean,
Like
you can
whale
imagine that.
bones.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you could imagine that is maybe inspired by reality. But the hairiness is interesting because now this has been referenced in a TV documentary about the Yeren, not
mhm.
specifically about the Yeti. Um, Peoples of all kinds, like we all know, different people around the world vary in hairiness, how much body hair they've got. And if you are part of a group of people that often doesn't have much body hair, and you see some like, insanely, there are groups of people like Europeans that can be insanely hairy, and
Yeah, yeah.
like imagine if you're from some like very smooth skin, naturally smooth skin race, and one day you discover there are these like shaggy bear people, which they really are. You might actually describe them as unusually hairy. I'm not sort of saying that's the
I'm a
explanation for
bit of a
this.
shaggy bear person myself.
Well, there you
Miles,
go.
Miles, you ever see like the woodcuts of Japanese people meeting like
Yeah,
Portuguese for like the first
100%,
time,
right? Yeah,
and they look like I think they called them like dog faced men or something
yeah.
like that, or hairy dog men. Like I think that's the word that Japanese people chose. They're
Ouch.
like, wow, these weird hairy guys. So like, yeah, it's kind of clear that these are just like a different group of people that Greeks just didn't encounter yet, and live in a very like more simple mode of society that doesn't have metallurgy or but much farming and stuff. Like
Yeah,
they're
so
it sounds like they're pastoralists, you know.
largely a
Um,
ridiculous hit for them being Yeti. But
yes.
an
Mm.
interesting one, I guess.
And here's the thing is in most cryptozoologists, like I don't know, I saw Lauren Coleman call this
Yeah,
out where he
that's
he
what I was going to
dismissed it.
mention.
Oh, okay. Where a lot of people like this is a kind of like people that really don't know their cryptozoology seem to say. But here's the interesting thing, Miles. On Lauren Coleman's blog about it, he was like, it might be a relic Neanderthal though. And I was
Yeah,
like,
they
oh
love
no.
those.
I was like, oh no.
I'm surprised it didn't go down the. Have you read the Merbeings book
Oh,
by
Oh,
we
we
talked about
haven't. We talked about it
Oh
briefly.
dear.
I've not seen the Merbeans
Oh
book.
wow, that's okay. We won't talk about that now, but that takes anything to do with like vaguely peoply shaped things that might wear a skin
mm,
and fish. Like, are they not surviving Oreopithecids that have adapted to survived from the Miocene, this aquatic group of apes, and they don seal skins or the
oh
skins of
jeez.
various aquatic animals, and even augment them with like venomous spines, like jellyfish stinging cells, and bioluminescent stuff, and
Sounds believable to me.
there's a lot of stuff going on in that.
Yeah.
But Lauren
Trey,
Coleman, yeah, sorry, go on.
you're fine. Trey came up to my house recently, and I showed him that band TED Talk with the aquatic ape woman, and we had a good laugh at that.
We got.
Elaine Morgan.
Let me
Uh,
see. What was her name? Aquatic.
Elaine. So it's not the aquatic ape proponent is the late Elaine Morgan, but
Yes.
was it her?
Yeah. She has like a band TED Talk on it.
Yes, and we were watching it. Remember, we were watching it, Miles, and like she was
Yeah.
making these claims, and even us who are like not like super experts on it, were like, "What are you talking about? Primates don't have body fat.
Yeah, she's
What?"
like primates
Like,
don't have body fat, and like only an aquatic species would have
I
that.
was
And you're
like,
like,
I
what?
saw a fat orangutan once. Like, like I'm pretty sure I saw that.
All of these claims about human exceptionalism, it does not take much knowledge of non-human primates to to find that's never been true.
Yeah,
And we've
it's
and
just
we've
freaking me out.
known.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So certainly all the aquatic ape claims, now well known to be completely bogus, but it's true of like a whole bunch of other things about primates. So I won't start talking about them because I'll go off on a tangent.
No
But
worries.
Miles, also people have used, like some very desperate people have used Pliny the Elder's natural history for Yeti stuff too, where there's like a single line in Pliny where he talks about how there might be satyrs in the mountains east of India, and they're very swift. They run on all fours, and then sometimes stand upright. Um, and it kind of sounds like, I think most people think it's some kind of like gibbon or ape or something. But then again, it's also like Pliny the Elder, and it's like he has all kinds of stuff in it. You know, he's got like one-footed men and people with faces on their chests and wind feeders. So it's like he's not describing anything that he saw. You know, he's describing weird tales. So yeah.
Yeah, I've run into that guy all the time in my historic research, and I'm always like, oh, this fucking guy. But anyways, back on the Yeti. So those are like some early possible counts. I don't think we can detail some of the like people and cultures around the Himalaya stuff as well because it's not as well documented in like Western sources. But needless to say, there are a lot of different cultural traditions about these creatures, just like there is anywhere in the world for dragon stories or wild men stories or impish creatures or even fae stories, right? Like cultures tell folklore, right? And folklore being wild men is nothing new. Welsh stories have wild men. I don't think it means that there are wild men on the island. So, but for some reason, when they are away from these cultures, they tend to be believed by Europeans to be more likely to be true, which I can understand because they're like, it seems exotic to you, but I don't think it gives it any more scientific credence. Um, but then we get the time when Europeans actually start actually writing and claiming to see this creature and start reporting evidence in like journals and papers and stuff. Do you want to begin the story of when this starts to happen in the 1800s, Darren?
Oh, um, well, like I say, I'm a bit vague on the
Sure.
exact origins. I know that there are a couple of accounts from Victorian times.
Mm-hmm.
There's one from I think 1899 where it's very much connected to romanticism about the exploration of the Himalayas and thereabouts, isn't it? The fact that
Yeah.
there's these eternal snows, there's these giant summits that no person has ever summited, and there is some kind of wild man that people say they see its prints. Oh, it's just standard stuff. Who doesn't know this? Yeah, they say
Yeah.
they see its prints. They might hear its cries, and they might see this shaggy beast. Somewhere up in the mountains, and of course, that really becomes, I would say, internationally well known. Certainly by the 30s, when you got the first efforts to scale Mount Everest.
Hmm.
It's they're clearly, the list of famous mountaineers, um, who are themselves. Like, I have to say, as a side thing here, that mountaineers are a really interesting group of people, because they're not just like kind of hardcore, explorers that have got all this kit and go on these ridiculous and dangerous missions, but there's a long tradition of European, in the broader sense of the term, mountaineers who work with the Sherpas, and have like this. They tend to be very, very wealthy and very well educated, learned people, and they've got this like massive interest in the history of everything about montane exploration. And I think that also connects to the writings about the Yeti, because every mountaineer is, they're not all men, but mostly men. That he is also like generally a historian of the subject, and writes about all the exploits and all the stories that come from the locals and all the mythology attached to the peaks and stuff. So
Yeah,
yes,
it
they're
seems the Mountaineers are a bit more of a wizened group than like the Percy Fawcett type characters. Um, their writing seemed a
yeah.
bit more informed.
I think, yeah, like, so someone like Percy Fawcett is obviously using tall tales to just spin yarns about
Yeah,
like the great adventures he went on. And when these guys, your Eric Shiptons and Edmund Hillarys and whatnot, when they are mentioning that, they're doing it in a more sage, sort of prosaic way. It's like there's the possibility this creature might exist, and we do take seriously these local claims. And it's still a poorly known, unexplored region, and who knows? We do have these tales of people seeing, possible pieces of evidence.
mm,
And we all know there are certain famous people, and I'm thinking of Sir David Attenborough in particular, who like make out that the things that have been seen. And here we're moving forward to like the 50s. Obviously,
sure.
51 is the famous Eric Shipton footprint, and alleged trackway that's alleged to go to the footprint, but totally doesn't.
Yeah,
That's when
we'll
you're,
get it. We'll get
yeah,
into that in a minute.
yeah. Sorry, spoiler.
No,
Yeah,
it's all right.
that's
Spoiler:
when you're.
Yeti may not be real.
Yeah. That's
Um,
when you've got the claim that people may be seeing stuff that's like legit, man. And this and it's connected to things that we know for definite existed, like Gigantopithecus, which was obviously well known scientifically. Well, no, it's not well known scientifically today, but was known scientifically
yeah,
by the 50s.
they're sure happy that we found Gigantopithecus blackie. Like it's very useful for them. Like that and the Celio can't. They just can't shut up about.
Yeah, tell me about.
But yeah, so what is often cited as like the first like Western report, other than Alexander fighting one with his bare hands, of course, is the 1832. There's a report of basically it's the caption goes, religion has introduced a native monkey into the central region. This is sorry by B.H. Hudson, and it says where it seems to flourish and is half domesticated, and it neighbors in the temples and the valleys of Nepal proper. One time, my shooters were alarmed by the apparition of a quote wild man, possibly an orang, but I doubt their accuracy. They mistook this creature for some kind of demon, and it fled off instead of being shot. It moved, they said, erectly, and was covered in long dark hair and had no tail. So that was basically like a Bigfoot ape man possible type sighting. Although, of course, Hodgson didn't seem to believe it, right? And like it's also mentioned that it was possibly a demon and stuff. Um, I, so this is in 1832. If you fast forward to 1924, like the Ape Canyon story, which is kind of like the predecessor for like Bigfoot ape man type things, and possibly in the Americas, they have like demon kind of aspects too. So like the creature being like this totally like naturalistic post Darwinian thing isn't fully ingrained into the myth at the time. Um, So we can get to the Eric Shipton thing, but just a couple dates. The Eric Shipton thing is in the 50s, but like I said, we have the Abe Canyon story in 24. And then, of course, the scaling of Everest happens in the 20s as well. And there's the possible sighting um, up on top of the mountain at like 1,500 feet with human like features, but we don't have any photographs of that. 1933, King Kong is released, which I often bring up as being important in the hip. I'm not the only one, but I think it's important in history of cryptozoology. And eventually, like, you have books like On the Track of Unknown Animals, um and Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist, that come out in the 50s and 60s, that, like, they mention Yeti but don't mention Bigfoot. So in this time period between the 20s and the late 60s, like, Yeti really is the thing people are looking for, not Bigfoot. And I think that mostly comes back to the mythology of Sasquatch not being fully set up yet, but also like these footprints of Shipton being like the most compelling evidence. And after the Gimlin video, I think it's like the second most cited positive example of a ape man. Um,
Mm.
so I,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think there's. I'm sorry. There's a couple of things that, and again, this mustn't go off on this tangent, but there's a few indications that early belief in Bigfoot is because the fame of the Yeti is such that people start asking, "Why don't we have one of those over here? We should have." And then people say, "Well, wait a minute, we actually kind of do." Um, Rene de Hinden, one of the four
Hmm.
horsemen, who's Swiss, and I seem to remember that his introduction to Bigfoot, he says that he just heard about abominable snowman fever, reading about it in the newspapers, and said, why don't you guys got that kind of thing over here? And someone says,
Let's
well,
get
if you
us
know,
one of
we
those.
we do. And there's a really thick book on the origins of Bigfoot in California by a guy called Dustin Severs. It's called The Abominable Snowman of California, and that is about the mythology of Bigfoot before it's called Bigfoot, and certainly before the Sasquatch
Yeah.
term comes in from Canada. So I haven't read that book. It's thick and weighty, but there seems to be this idea that like people want abominable snowman in North America, and so it's this universal international fame of the Yeti that drives what might happen elsewhere.
Yeah, because like I said, On the Track of Unknown Animals doesn't have the word Bigfoot in it, right? And like that is one of the
Mm.
landmark cryptid books, So it just shows that like this wasn't in the conscious yet, like Yeti was.
I did not, I kind of didn't realize that like, yeah, like the word Bigfoot and Sasquatch had to be like focus group tested, like they're like, oh shoot, we
Yes.
don't really have a good name. Abominable Snowman of America, and you're like, oh, that sucks. It's a terrible name.
Yeah, well, Bigfoot itself, again, the tangent, but yeah, Bigfoot starts out as the two separate words, Bigfoot, kind of like it's a joke. So yeah, before it's I don't know. There's this big argument about the historical Bigfoot, isn't there? People claiming that there is such a thing, but no, I think it's pretty clear that those stories from Northern California are people making a joke out of claiming to
Mm.
find big footprints and
Speaking of people making a joke, so 1951 is the
Yeah.
Eric Shipton photos. Now, like I said, this is probably the second or third most important bit of cryptid evidence there is. So like you have
It's
like
very
this. There's,
iconic. Like the thing with Bigfoot is Bigfoot doesn't have like the footprint, like if you're
yeah,
like right, like is there not like there's not like a Bigfoot footprint. We
I
have the
agree.
video. Like
That's the
with
video.
with Yeti, you have like the Yeti footprint. Like this is
mm,
the Yeti footprint.
Yeah.
Like
So I would say
we
this
saw
footprint.
it in that the Harry and the Hendersons. It's in the background.
That's right. This footprint, the Bigfoot video, and the surgeon's photo of Nessie are like the three pieces of evidence. I think the other two are widely debunked, and we've debunked them, I think, pretty well on the podcast. So this is the one we haven't really talked about too much yet. Do you want to start, Darren, talking about the Shipton's photo? What are your thoughts about this? When's the first time you saw it? Actually, do you remember that?
no, because it's like always been
Sure.
there, like a sick ape huddled in the corner of my mind.
Hmm.
So like if I think of my favorite monster books from childhood, I'm a kid of the 70s and 80s, and so if I think of like monster books like the Osborne Book of Monsters from like 1981 or whatever, it's got it in there as like this establishes the reality of the Yeti. It has a foot like this. You can tell it's a primate foot. Yeah, you can tell it's a, yeah. So I've always known about it, and
It's the
this,
first image, actually. Like the version that I had of the World of Unknown Monsters, the first image on the upper left side is mysterious footprints, right?
right, yes, and I've thought for quite a long time that I think we can explain it. And okay, so a little bit of background. I'm currently working on a book that involves analysis of as many famous cryptid photos as I can get.
Nice.
And I, by complete coincidence, finished this week the shipped in 1951 Yeti footprint photo. So it's relatively fresh in my mind. And yeah, it's intimately tied to the history of Himalayan exploration.
Mhm.
So a team of mountaineers are aiming to summit Everest, and I'm sure this is of interesting to some people. There's this claim that it should be pronounced Everest based on the guy it's named after. Anyway, they're approaching it from the north side. They split into two teams, and Michael Ward and Eric Shipton, they're about 50-ish miles to the west of Everest, I think, and they probably cross a border and go illegally into Tibet, which of course is owned by China. They didn't know that. They keep that quiet. And on Menlung Glacier, they discover a trackway. And a trackway is a series of footprints. And whenever I talk about this, I try not to use the word track because that can mean either a single footprint or a whole line of footprints. So that's trackway is multiple footprints. Footprint is it's obvious what that is. They photograph this trackway twice, and it's made by a single animal. And then they say that at the end of this trackway, this animal with very clearly, hominid feet has, sort of like left a really clear footprint, and obviously that's the best print you can get. The best photo they got. They only took one photo. No, they took two photos of the actual individual print. One with Ward's boot for scale, and one with an ice pick for scale. And yeah, and they're like, "Oh my god, guys, we've done it." And the other team, so the team that split from them, they said that, and the guy who's best known from that group, he's called Bill Murray, but it's not the same Bill Murray that most of us know. So
You
I,
say that, I believe it.
I generally call him like WMT Murray or whatever his initials are, so to not have to explain this. But Bill Murray saw this trackway.
Whoa, that's a crazy trackway. I don't know if that's Bill Murray impression.
Very good, Trey.
Yeah, but that separate team, they didn't see the best footprint, and so in all the descriptions afterwards, everyone thinks they're talking about the same thing. But okay, so I have to. Do I skip forward to the spoilery bit?
Yes, yeah, you can spoil it. Breaking news: Yeti likely not real. Continue.
The trackway prints are made by some kind of largish mammal that's got rounded feet, and in one of the footprints, in one of the photos of the trackway, the prints look very hoofy. They look like they were made by like a there's three kinds of big shaggy mountain hoofed mammals up there. There's yaks, there's the baral or blue sheep, and there's the tar, which is a kind of goat antelope creature. And these are probably like yak or baral footprints. They bear no resemblance whatsoever to a primate print. And the lone Eric Shipton. I keep saying lone. I keep forgetting there's two photos. The two photos of the close up of the foot. It's clearly nothing to do with those trackway prints.
That's what's so strange, right? So you see the long list of snow impressions that they show, and they look they kind of look like a butt almost. They're like a Pac-Man, right? They're like kind of rounded, and then there's a little like part that goes in, and then
Yeah,
there's like a long series of them. They don't look like foot, couple feet, foot, couple feet, foot. Like you might draw if someone asked you to draw like basic footfalls. They're all like very like unison, and then there's the close-up photos, one with the boot, one with the ice pick for scale, that look very different than those. So I've
totally different.
been
Yeah,
confused by that for I don't know 30 years now.
And
I
then there's the
always
fact
thought
that of the up close, they take this picture of the same footprint, right? Like it's not like they're not like
that,
taking a series or anything. It's like the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
exact
the
one.
same, yeah, and I've always said if you want to demonstrate to someone that a footprint you find is a footprint, well, you're supposed to take 10, 20, 30
Mm.
photographs of. Okay, they couldn't do that. I'm sure they were limited, but they should have taken a couple of photos, and they didn't. It's the same one. Now the photo is often shown cropped, so you can't see what's around it, and if in the uncropped ones, it's important that you see that to its um, like in front of it and to its right, and behind it and to its right, there are two other depressions that basically look roughly the same size and shape, but without the sharp details, without the sharp toe impressions. And the sharpness is important because the footprint itself doesn't make any sense because it's super amorphous and shapeless in the middle, as if it's been subjected to a lot of melting and it's not fresh. But some of its edges and the toes are like as sharp as could possibly be, like they've
yeah,
just been
Like they've
made,
been chiseled.
and
Yeah.
like someone has literally just jabbed their own fingers into that print to make them basically.
Mm.
And I think that's exactly what happened. I think that so Ward has always defended like the authenticity of these tracks as like they were legit. And I know he was actually like a trainee surgeon based at a London hospital at the time, and he was like, oh, I know anatomy. I know what I saw, man. And Shipton was notorious for being like a bit of a joker. There's a list of various silly jokes that we know he did play on other people and things he wrote about that are just stupid. He just
yeah.
wrote stupid
His
stories.
contemporary quoted as saying he's well known to take the Mickey out of people. Is his
Oh.
Yes.
contemporary phrase
Yeah.
describing him. Yeah,
So I did an article at Tetrapod Zoology in like the early 2000s saying I think I've cracked it. I think it like Shipton actually took one of these amorphous hollows, jabbed some of his fingers in, made it look like a sort of footprint. They took a picture. They didn't really, or two pictures again. They didn't really know that it would sort of go viral, as it were. It did, and then it became almost impossible to back out of it.
yeah,
And I've since learned that, in view of what I was saying about mountaineers being super into like history and everything, that other mountaineers that have written like there's a biography of Eric Shipton by a guy called Peter Steele. Eric Shipton, Everest and Beyond. And in that book, and in reviews of that book, and in articles about that book, and in articles about that whole 1951 expedition in general, other mountaineers have written at length about this. And there's a bunch of them that have come to exactly the same conclusion and have been really quite pointed in saying that there's basically no doubt that Shipton did fake that footprint, and it's got no connection to the trackway prints. Ward might not have known this because the print is supposed to have been discovered by Shipton, and Ward like stumbled, along.
yeah.
Who knows, 5-10 minutes later or whatever. So, oh gosh, look at that. And then they told the second team, the team they split from, the Bill Murray one. They told them that hey, that line of tracks you saw, that was the same, made by the same animal. So they then all thought that they'd seen the same thing.
Another
So
thing about the photo is if you look at it, the upper right part is like broken off, right? Like,
of the corner of the snowy bit,
yeah, so like you can see like you can see the depth of the, I don't know
yeah,
if it's like ice or snow at the time, and like there's like rock beneath it or whatever the surface is. It's different colorization,
yeah,
so it's like totally different context than the entire trail. The trail
yes,
looks like it's like a flat snow that's like I don't know a couple inches tall over the frozen dirt there, and then this is like on the corner wherever this is. It's almost like cut off. It's a very different context
I
than
agree.
Mm.
the other
Yeah,
photos. So it's
yeah.
very strange.
It looks like it's the edge of like a snow cliff. If you imagine a snow
Yeah.
drift that's, I don't know, like a few feet tall, and yeah, you're right. You can see that the broken bits of it are at a lower elevation, not by far, by tens of
Sure.
centimeters than the layer with the footprint on it. And if you look at the broken off chunks at lower elevation, they've got tread on them, like boot tread.
Hmm.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
someone has clearly like walked around the edge of that bit and broken it off. And their story is that they lost the footprints when they sort of followed the trackway and it kind of disappeared. They lost the sort of like fidelity,
Hmm.
the shape of the tracks in a sort of like blocky, lumpy, like ice field. But yeah, you're right. That's like it's not consistent at all with the look of that photo.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Also, I don't know how much a Yeti weighs, but it doesn't seem like a 6 to 8 foot tall, 350 pound footprint to me. Um,
I think that's legit. Yeah, it's
yeah.
fair enough.
Again, I've never weighed a Yeti, but it doesn't seem right.
It's really it's interesting the type of stuff people will say about the print, because in this episode, because you didn't see the episode, Darren, but they have Jeff Meldrum on and to talk about
Oh yes.
the Shipton footprint, and yes, he thought it was authentic, right, Miles? He was like,
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Jeff Meldrum believes in it. I just recently put the video on YouTube of our discussion with Jeff and listening to back to him talk about the footprints. It's pretty interesting. I find the footprint evidence of all these phenomenon of large bipedal apes to be not very convincing. You
mm,
know,
Yeah.
and the fact that he find so many of them that do not look morphologically that similar to each other to be convincing has always concerned me
well,
greatly.
Yes. So
yes.
yeah. Sorry, Trey. Go on.
Oh no, yeah, that's the thing is in the episode he bases like it was kind of weird where as Darren says we only really have the two photos and they had say Jeff he examined a reconstruction form of the print in 2008 that like they reconstructed in three-dimensional form from the photos, which is like how reliable is that? Like because it's not a cast. It's like you took the photos of like and these are photos of the same exact perspective and
I'm
you
upset that I didn't get my notes together for this, nor is my memory good enough. But it's so we should say first of all for R.I.P. Jeff Meldrum,
Yeah.
mm,
a sad loss. You know.
Yeah, he
Um,
did his very best to bring honesty and professionalism to cryptozoology, which it's in dire need of. And though we may
yeah.
disagree with him, we do respect him, and that's why we had him on the show. There's not
mm,
many believers we would welcome on. So
I've just said on the Tetsu podcast I do with John Conway that like this is a historically culturally like a really interesting loss because he was their one guy.
yeah,
Like that whole
yeah.
field doesn't have anyone that's in that position. Yes, they have a few academics that are interested. Yes, they have a few people that have published or contributed to the technical literature and stuff. But yeah, no one that is that's like was trying to lead a charge like he was. So
Mm,
yeah, but yeah, I was always surprised by his book, the Sasquatch Legend Meets Science.
hmm,
He says in there that there's a track again, a footprint. I think it's just one from a 1972 ish expedition in somewhere like Pakistan, where those guys photographed a track, and Jeff's like, yeah, this is evidence for the same kind of foot. And it's so not. It's nothing like it at all. It's like the vaguest similarity. But there's a paper that was. This is another interesting thing about cryptozoology, and also something that some people got some splaining to do. Like in the past, people could get like a 2-page paper on my reconstruction of the foot of the Yeti, like into like Nature, and that happened. There's and I've forgotten the name of the author. There's it's a Russian name like Chernovsky. There's this paper that says that based on the 51 photos, we can say the Yeti's foot is like this, and they provide a anatomical kind of reconstruction. It's weird because I think that the shapes they actually reconstruct for the two medial toes, the hallux or the big toe, and the second toe, the shapes they propose for those are kind of like weird bent human finger and like your thumb and first finger. They're sort of like way slimmer and sort of pointier tipped than what I actually think is the case in the Shipton photo, and that reconstruction is the basis for a plaster model that was made, and that's the model that Jeff is talking about. So there's this, again, this kind of like canonical view of the body of evidence that we have, which is basically a series of, it's a house of cards, because it's all based on you thinking that the Shipton photo is real and that it looks the way that that person reconstructed it.
Yeah,
Which
it's quite strange. You look at this photo, like, it doesn't look like a orangutan foot imprint, right? Because orangutans have their big thumb, like their big toe, like all the way down deep into their palm, like and out to the right, you know. So like it's not an orangutan. So I don't like, and as far as I understand, like you would suspect somewhat of a similar morphology from Gigantopithecus blacki, which is like always the thing they want to point to. So I don't know why it would have a foot like this. It doesn't really look like a gorilla foot. Gorillas do have it pointing to the right, but it's more up and like large and out to the right. So like that doesn't look like this either. This looks like a human footprint with a really big toe. I guess maybe more like a baboon, but baboons point more at the bottom. So like I don't like, what does this look like? This doesn't look like any known ape footprint in existence. So maybe that's their point. Oh, well, it's made up, but like, where is it coming from? It has to evolve from something, like what family is this? Like,
Well, and Miles, you're so right, because we have like, if you're saying that this is like a relic hominid, like something that's closely related to us, right? Like a Homo erectus
yeah,
kind of situation.
which is what
Like
Jeff believes, right? Like he
we
believes that.
we know like what Australopithecus footprints look like in
Yeah,
Homo erectus, and they're like us. They look like human footprint. Like, they
well,
don't
they've
look
got,
like this.
they do have a more so the conventional deal for obviously anthropoid primates as monkeys and apes is to have an abducted hallux. So yeah, the hallux, the big toe, is projecting almost 90 degrees to the relative to the long axis, as would be your hand if you pushed your hand into the ground with your thumb sticking inwards. So yeah, that's what you would expect. So in the fact that they're saying it doesn't have that and it's got a more human-like configuration, well then, if you're saying that it's got a non-abducted hallux, the hallux has become in line with the other toes, then are you saying that it is a hominin closer to us than maybe like Australopithecines are? Because as you just said, Trey, we've got the Laetoli trackways of Australopithecines. We've got some idea of what's going on there. Or is it like a convergent adaptation that they've evolved a human-like foot from a more conventional anthropoid configuration? Or, and we mustn't forget, this is again a crucial part of cryptozoology, this like whole creature building spec bio kind of take on it. Or is it that the conventional understanding of evolution is completely wrong,
yeah.
and that in
Some of them
actual
would love
fact,
that,
and
right?
Hooverman's, this always surprised me, but now I know a lot more about it. Hooverman says in the 50s that probably the human type foot is the ancestral one, and the foot of apes like orangutans is the super specialized one that has evolved from a human-like condition. And now I know, thanks to the that Hooverman's book with Porshnev, L'Homme de Néandertal est toujours vivant, Neanderthal man's alive today,
Yeah,
that has now been translated into English. So we know from that Hoovermans and various other cryptozoologists were actually of this like alternative school of thought, where they thought that like there's ancestral marine vertebrates that give rise to the terrestrial ones, and the ancestral marine vertebrates are little humans. They're homunculi, and they give rise to little animals that look like us, that have got like human-like feet and are erect bipeds with large brains and stuff, and they give rise not just to us and to yetis and to the Minnesota Iceman,
Oh my gosh.
but also that
They
they
don't
are
want to
the
throw
true.
Piltdown Man in there too? Like
Ah, come on, don't be silly. I picked that. got to put a limit somewhere. Yeah, that all of the other mammals and probably all the other terrestrial vertebrates are the descendants of homunculus animals. So like the human body form is ancestral, like for most mammals. This is the initial bipedalism hypothesis, and therefore, if an animal like a yeti has got a human-like footprint within that model, that's actually what you expect. It's retained the ancestral configuration, and if it's got like a monkey foot or an orangutan foot, that would be a specialized, descendant foot from the more human-like one, right? So never forget that is in there as well. There is this like this love of like, if you explain that to someone in mainstream primatology or mammalogy, they will, what are you smoking?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Where is this coming from?
It's
But it's like that is inherent to a lot of the cryptozoological project. I mean to write about that because I don't think this is well known enough.
Hey guys, this is Miles interjecting a little bit after we recorded the episode. When I was editing it, I was doing a little extra research, and I actually found that the original shipped in photos were auctioned off a few years ago, and within them contained the actual envelope in which the original photos were sent. And I'm going to place a picture of this envelope in the YouTube version of the podcast if people want to check out the videos. But in my opinion, if you look at this envelope, it's a very intentionally comically drawn envelope. Like, it says pictures of the abominable snowman's feet on it. The word pictures is spelt wrong on purpose and then crossed out. It is the word show. It says abominable show man's feet, and then the word show is crossed off, and then snow is written. The word feet isn't crossed off and written again. I can't make out why. There's like comical footprints drawn. It's a very crude, simple drawing, like a doodle almost. To my mind, it looks very comedic, which would track with the hypothesis that Shipton was a funny, tricky kind of guy. So, interesting bit of evidence that I was not aware of on the recording of this podcast that I thought should be mentioned. We talk about this in relation to other cryptids, but like I think like the whole field of cryptozoology is basically 100 years in the past. Like their versions of what the things would look like and what you would expect is all like 100 years old versions of like morphology. Like that,
Yep.
you see some kind of dinosaur in the Congo. What does it look like? 100-year-old version of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Like what would the ape people look like? Decades old version. Like they don't have they didn't keep up with we know this morphology, this kind of fossil, these footprints, we can track these things, we have expectations based on evolution. All that stuff just isn't part of their theories because it just
I
wasn't
agree.
there in the
Yeah.
beginning. So
Yes, there's certain areas of human thought that are museums
yeah.
of ideas, and I think a good argument, yeah, like you've hit the nail on the head. Yeah, cryptozoology is a museum of ideas.
Yeah, it's like, I always say like post-Darwinian world, things become popular, things get mainstream, they get sticky. You get like literature people starting to make fun versions of those. What would we see? What would we expect? And like, it's a pop culture version that gets to people's heads, and you get a clever guy in a bar or a clever explorer guy who aren't scientists start telling stories, and then you just get cryptozoology coming from that, and then people who are more serious try to latch onto it. But I think it's kind of it's a dated thing. It's a relict school of thought. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
it's
I,
not interesting, but
I totally. Yeah, culturally and socially, yeah, super interesting. But yeah, I think it's often if you're a clever person in the pre-internet age, and you want to know about proto-humans
mhm.
or dinosaurs, what are you going to do? You're going to go to like the encyclopedia that your dad owns or something, and if that's in 1950, that's going to be a book from 1915.
Yeah.
Like, like when I was a kid, I grew up in a sort of bookless culture, and based on my relatives and parents and stuff, if I want to know stuff, I'm looking at like old encyclopedias.
Hmm.
And I think that you would think, of course, that the knowledge from books of decades ago, you don't have any reason to necessarily think that things have moved on a lot. And yeah, so I think that the cryptozoologists were often smart and well-read people, but because they weren't specialists keeping up with thoughts on whatever that concerns, new finds of hominins in Africa or dinosaurs, whatever, new thoughts. They are, decades behind, and not knowing that it's very strange to see. I don't want to pick on him in particular, but Hooverman's talking in the 50s about things that are known to be decades out of date when he's writing about them in the 50s. He's like,
Yeah.
dude, that was shown to be completely wrong in 1936. How did you not know that?
I think it's worth mentioning that. So, Bob Gilman, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Darren. Um, Very popular YouTuber on cryptids and weird stories. Has a very
Hmm.
popular video on the Shipton Yeti prints where he
Oh,
argues.
that Bob Gimlin.
Yeah,
Sorry, I thought you said Gilman.
no,
Yes,
no.
I know.
Bob Gilman would
Bob.
probably be awesome. I love the guy. That's a cryptid I wish people believed in. I wish we could have an episode on the Gill Man. I fucking love that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, A Shape of Water, great movie. Anyways, so he has a video that is often cited as like the apologetic on these footprints and is quoted by a lot of people, some of whom are more reasonable cryptozoology people, that like this is a good argument.
Oh, I like the title of this video, Miles. The Shipton Yeti prints and why they're probably real. It gets to the
Yeah.
point. Gets to the point.
I find this video. I don't really want to be rude to Bob, but I find this like to be a very juvenile argument. Like I, he has a
Miles,
way.
we watched a whole bunch of Bob Gimlin videos when I was over at your house, and we had a similar kind of takeaway where we're like, oh, these are such bad arguments.
Do you know he got on? Do you know he got on the Joe Rogan show?
I just saw that right now. Yeah.
So you know how like ancient aliens be like, if you couldn't explain this, and then if you couldn't explain this, well then how would you explain this, right?
Yeah.
Or they like build this premise and it sounds logical, but it's like, well, okay, all these are unfounded premises, right? This is basically what he does in this video. And he's like, oh, you couldn't explain this with snow melt, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, he doesn't really take into account all the other arguments that people make, and he builds his case. And he has a kind of serious sounding tone that's also passionate, so I think people go along with him. But you can watch that video if you don't agree with our take on these footprints. But I do not find them compelling. If this was a footprint of an unknown animal, the same footprint has never been found again. So I think that is a pretty good argument. If there are unknown animals leaving tracks, and they are very rare, you would expect very similar bits of evidence to show up every once in a while, especially when people spend money to look. And every time we do find a hit of a Yeti, they're always different. It's different looking, different size, different shape. And that to me is a cultural phenomenon and not a zoological one. So that's all I'll say.
And you're right, Miles. It's funny to get into the cryptozoology brain with some of this stuff where they're like,
Yeah.
well, the reason it looks different, the reason these don't match is because with the Eric Shipton foot in the Monster Quest episode, they're like, it's a result of macrodactyly. Like it's a valid foot, but it's a special, unique, rare condition that we're able to, and that like that's so weird. It's similar with that Bigfoot cripple foot where like 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 the Jeff Meldrum was like, yes, it's an authentic foot, but it's of it's a unique individual, so therefore I know it's valid somehow, even though it doesn't. You need to have the typology. You need to have the type. You need to have like the idea of what is a valid footprint, and then contrast it with what is not a valid footprint. But like it seems like they're just like, like this doesn't contrast that because it looks different because it's a rare genetic condition.
If
like,
they
how do you
did
do that?
If they did that, Trey, they wouldn't have a field of study, so they can't do that, right?
Okay, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
But yeah, just to give, if you do want to watch that video, you're definitely welcome to. Like I said, I don't find it very valid, but it's there and people will cite it.
Yeah, I kind of find his stuff entertaining. I have enjoyed watching a lot of his stuff, but yeah, I don't want to be mean to him, but yeah, I like the actual arguments. The arguments boil down to, isn't it cool? Wouldn't it be cool if? So like, I seem to remember his argument from that video is doesn't this look like a real primate foot to you?
Yeah,
Which
and he had
It's
somebody
you
draw.
got the narration done pretty good, Darren.
He had one we watched. Trey and I watched together, where it's like, this is the best Bigfoot evidence there is, and it's a photo of like a brown blurry thing in the bottom right hand corner, and he tries to like analyze it, and his analyzing is just actually wrong, like factually wrong, like for how like the photo would work. But it's just like, how does that get you anywhere? Like, how do these photos get you anywhere? It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, regardless of that, um, this was in the 50s, and then obviously, of course, um, Bigfoot isn't quite a thing really to like the late 60s, 70s. Then it like really pops up. But the Yeti has always been around. But it seems like at some point, Bigfoot mythology in North America kind of overtakes the Yeti as more popular. Of course, the Yeti's still around. Yeti's in Disneyland, right? On the Matterhorn. So he's still there. Uh, but you get less sightings, I think. So
Hmm.
like we have the Reinhold sighting in 86. He eventually decides that he saw a bear, right? He was a mountaineer. He's like, oh, I saw Yeti. Nah, it was a bear.
Reinhold Messner.
Yeah.
Yes. My Quest for the Yeti, or whatever his book is called.
Yeah. And then there's actually a sighting by the Indian Army, and then they eventually decided that was a bear. And then there was the DNA thing.
Miles, you're talking about the Indian Army and this border, and I'm imagining like those like shield walls that they
Yeah.
form with like the Chinese government. I'm like
Oh yeah.
picturing like a Yeti showing up when they're doing their crazy like border like fights. It's like, holy shit, there's a Yeti! Stop the fight! Stop the fight!
Yeah.
So, Ryan, can I just like
Yeah.
cover Reinhold Messner briefly, because I find his I am not a fan, and you two will be on side with me. I'm not a fan of kind of like automatic knee-jerk skepticism.
Sure.
Yes.
I think that there's quite a lot of people that call themselves skeptics who are very sciencey, and they think that all this stuff is instantly nonsense and you should never take it seriously. Don't even think about it. It's just instantly nonsense. And there's a tendency to want to jump on what looks like a skeptical in the positive sense, like a good skeptical explanation for a given phenomenon. And I think that among skeptics of cryptozoology, there was too much piling on's the wrong term, because that's a negative thing. There was too much latching onto the Reinhold Messner's like bear hypothesis, when, and obviously there is some truth to the bear explanation. There's some truth to it, but Messner like has been so woefully inconsistent on what he has and hasn't seen, and what experiences he has had and hasn't had. I think that book makes out that like it explains everything, and he saw bears like walking around, like that there's a kind of bear that walks around fully bipedally and whistles in the air and stuff, which that's borderline a cryptid. It's like we all know that bears walk bipedally, and I'm sure bears can make all kinds of weird noises. I don't know about whistling, but this claim that there's like a Yeti-like bear that is a biped and whistles and stuff. And what confuses me is that I've been told by people that know Messner that he changed his mind, and he hasn't written about the change of mind that he had. So the actor Brian Blessed, famous for his "Am I allowed to shout?"
Yeah.
Gordon's alive.
I must say, I did the Tarzan film 3 or 4 years ago, the animated Tarzan film, and I'm Clayton in it, the villain. I was on it for about 2 years, and Disney was there and all of them. And finally we finished the film, and I'm leaving, and the guy who plays the villain in Ghost, the film, was the voice of Tarzan. He has that strange voice. Oh, a rather strange voice, which is rather good for Tarzan, rather innocent. And he's the man who's the villain in Ghost. Anyway, I was leaving. They said, "Well done, Brian," said Disney. "Brian, you've done a great job. The car's outside, you're going to the airport." And then I heard the Tarzan doing the yodel. And he was going, and he couldn't do the bloody yodel. And the Americans are very worried. I said, "Well, look, I said, when I was a kid, we went to the Johnny Weissmuller films, and we all did the yodel as little boys. No, Brian, this is going to be a real problem for us. So, no. His car, they got solicitors down, and I had a bloody contract for the yodel.
Brian Blessed is a mountaineer and knows Reinhold Messner and is a massive Yeti proponent, like believes in the Yeti. And there's an interview with Brian Blessed where he says, oh, of course, Reinhold Messner, he's like the best mountaineer in the world, and he's seen the Yeti 5 times. And the interviewer says, but I thought Messner has dismissed the Yeti as a bear. And Blessed said, well, not till he walked into one. He was walking along the Chungchungajima Pass near Deepak Maral. The details aren't quite accurate here. And he literally walked into a Yeti. And he said it was 7 foot tall and it had slanted green eyes and it smelled terribly bad. And it's like, Brian, did Reinhold Messner really say this to you? Is this actually, it's published, it's like on record. He said at other times that he has obtained Yeti carcasses, I believe more recently than he published the book. Now, I'm not going anywhere in particular with this. I'm not saying that any of this demonstrates that, sorry guys, Yetis are actually real, and the story of Reinhold Messner's one is legit. I'm saying that yeah, some of the latching on to Messner was probably too hasty, and there's some amount of elasticity in how reliable he should be. His claims should be.
Yeah, I also don't love this. Oh, it's a bear. Oh, it's an eel thing.
It's too easy.
Like,
too easy.
People do that with Loch Ness. You know, like they're like, "Oh, it's an eel. It's confirmed to be an eel." I'm like, "No, that's not. That's not how people weren't just seeing an eel for all these sightings. That's not what happened." You know, like
it's too simple. Like that's the thing. Like I get that with or older stuff, Miles. Like I've seen people take. There's like Irish sagas or something that talk about like a great elk and great bulls, and they're like, well, those are Irish elk and those are aurochs, and that's about mammoth. Or the one that's like griffins are protoceratops skulls or something like that. And I'm like it's too simple of an explanation, and then also it's like untestable, you know.
I also find they're not necessarily needed.
Yeah, sometimes they're not. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they're just not needed. Like, why can't somebody just make up something out of whole cloth as opposed to?
I do kind of buy the Cyclops elephant skull thing a little bit.
Whoa, really? Come on, you're joking.
I don't know. I see them, and I'm like,
you hear it so much. Like that's the thing is like
there's just no need for the explanation.
There's no need for that because people can have birth defects and be born with cycloptic babies.
Well, also
animals.
People have what's called creativity, and
yes.
what if one eye isn't actually that creative, right?
Yeah, I forget where there's a point in history where the cyclopeanness of the predatory giants gets mixed in, and the explanation that it might be based on elephant skulls is like a lot of the people that are supposed to have been fooled by that would have actually known elephant skulls due to their familiarity with stories from India and Northern Africa.
Homer would have never fallen for that shit.
It's called geomythology, isn't it? This effort to explain stories this way, and of course, it's most famously associated with Adrian Maya. That's the I was talking about this just recently with Mark Whitten, one of the authors of the pushback paper to Adrian Maya's Gryphoceratops, I think is the term they're now using for the Protoceratops is the origin of the griffin myth, and of course the evidence is pretty good that it's not. It's like it does not have a clear
It just
connection.
doesn't it doesn't offer any extra explanatory power is the thing, right? Like to the extent that that ever happened, fine, but it didn't need to happen, and like it's used to describe so many different things, it just seems unnecessary to me.
Yeah.
Um, but what was I saying? I was also like I can believe like the owl is the Flatwood monster, like the Joe Nickel explanation, because that's like a single sighting. Someone sees an owl because there's not like a bunch of Flatwood monster sightings, really, right? So like
Mm-mm.
I can believe it as a one-off thing, but like as a massive cultural misunderstanding of identifying bones and then therefore monster, I just don't think it's needed.
I'm pretty sure there's an episode of Ancient Aliens or something which says how there's they talk about the Flatwoods monster, and then there's a claim of some entirely separate weird reptilian aliens that are seen flying around on discs that they sit on,
Oh my
and
gosh,
surely that's the
Darren,
Flatwoods monster, but
Darren,
without
that's
the
not
cloak.
that's not Ancient Aliens. That's Monster
Huh?
Quest.
Oh, that's Monster Quest.
Yeah,
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
it's next
Ah,
season.
oh, sorry.
Head start.
Yeah.
Not quite. Not spoiler again.
The secret like control that Monster Quest has is like starting that myth. Like, oh my gosh, the connection. That's so
So
funny.
you
It's that
guys are just
notorious.
spreading a bunch of doubt about the Yeti because these footprints and the sightings aren't good enough, and nonsense about morphology and evolution. But you know, all of you skeptics are always wanting, well, bring me a body. Well, guess what, you two? We have a hand and a skull of the Yeti,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
that's proof. So what do you say about that,
We,
skeptics?
we got we got Peter Byrne, who is I looked him up. I never really heard him before. He's considered one of the four horsemen of Sasquatchery.
Mhm.
Who is John Green, Grover Kranz, and then in my notes I said another guy I don't remember.
And another
Rene
guy,
de Hinden.
And when
Hinden.
Darren said his name, I was like, oh, okay, there he is.
Yeah, Hinden.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
Peter Byrne was the last of them to leave us. He was alive most recently, yeah. Yeah, and funded for years by Tom Slick. So he, led this kind of like vague expedition of the Pacific Northwest, constantly looking for Bigfoot evidence, and was kind of like in that weird professional game hunter, but also kind of conservationist sort of field.
Hmm.
And so did travel a lot around what was the British Empire, and so would have gone to India and thereabouts. And so what's his connection to, so the hand is the Pangboche or
Mhm.
Pangbosh monastery hand, which for as long as it's been reported, it's obviously like primate skeletal remains.
He
Oh,
in the episode he talks about he was in the 60s, I think. He was shown the hand and allowed to photograph it, and then was permitted to cut off a finger. And he has like a very fun story about how he smuggled it out of the country, Miles. Remember this? We
Yeah,
recreated this when I visited you
yeah.
in
So,
Seattle.
in a
so the,
lingerie box.
In
the
my
famous
lingerie
thing
box.
is that Jimmy Stewart and his wife helped smuggle this out, which I condone. By the way, I think it was awesome, and the idea was, you know, this monastery had this artifact, almost like a reliquary, like this like saint thing, right?
It's
Like the
yeah,
Catholics have.
I think Buddhists have I don't know if they're incorruptible in the same way that like Catholics they don't rot, but
Yeah,
Buddhists do have like skeletal remains of like of people that were wise and keep them in the monastery.
yeah. Well, the skull, for example, was said to be of a Yeti that like helped one of the guys from the monastery and like healed him and everything. And
Well,
so,
it's not a skull; it's a scalp, right? The
oh yeah,
Kunlun scalp. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, just
No, yeah.
don't want people thinking there's a whole skull.
No, no,
Yeah.
not a whole skull, just the scalp. Yes, I'm sure a lot of people have seen pictures of it. You know, brown, rounded, reddish brown fur on it. Anyway, so Jimmy Stewart, you know,
Oh, honey, we
basically,
gotta smuggle the Yeti hand out.
it's the Yeti. See, it's the great white beast of the north. People got a right to know. Listen, darling, I know it's delicate, but we're gonna need to use your delicates. People got to see it. Golly. Anyway, so the story is often that they stole it. There's some talk maybe they paid a guy off to get it, but probably stole it. Anyway, they take the fingers, they put it in Jimmy Stewart's wife's lingerie. They get it through customs, but actually when they get back off the airport and everything, it gets lost, which is
Yes.
crazy. It gets lost and like, oh shit, we lost the proof of the Yeti. But luckily, uh, you know, bureaucrats figure out the paperwork and they get it back. And actually, nobody opened it, so they were able to smuggle it out. And then they test it, and doesn't appear to be a Yeti,
Well, that's the thing
unfortunately.
is in the Monster Quest episode had outdated information because Peter
Yeah,
Byrne claims scientists such as primatologist Osmond Hill got a hold of it before it got lost and said all they could say is that it was not human. The doctor died and no one knows what happened to the finger. And
Yeah, I don't think this is true at all. I don't think it was ever lost. So it went to, yeah, Osmond Hill, really well known primatologist, produced like tons of like really respected work and did loads of measurements and stuff on it. And I think he said, so Peter Byrne has said in some interviews that he clipped it off and replaced it by wiring, connecting by wiring like a human hand to a human finger to the Pangboche one that he took, and it went to Osman Hill, who took measurements of it, and there's comments from him here and there where he says that its proportions are like those of a human. And then that would have gone. Osman Hill was based at one of the London teaching universities. I can't remember which one, and that is the specimen that has recently been genetically tested in
Mhm.
the wake of oh dear, what's his name, geneticist Sykes, I think. So yeah, and that said, yeah, it's human.
Dr. Rob Ogden?
That's not who I'm thinking of,
Mm.
but is that someone associated with the genetic tests, the more recent ones?
Yeah. And they said that the mummified remains were held in the Royal College of Surgeons Museum in London since the
Oh, there you
50s.
go. Yeah, yeah. So if it's in the 50s, it's been there the whole time. It's not
It's
lost.
never
It's
been
just like,
lost.
yeah, the people that knew it was there knew it was there, but they
yeah, but it's
probably
a
weren't
cooler
asked.
story if it's lost, I guess.
People like lost stuff. People like Oak Island like stuff where yeah.
Lost
It was
tapes.
lost tapes.
So the Jimmy Stewart connection, I mean, so in our world, I think it's quite well known that Jimmy Stewart had this kind of like weird, sort of semi-apocryphal connection to this subject. He's also, of course, claimed to have been the real owner of Frank Hansen's Minnesota Iceman. And there's a claim that Stewart was deliberately like buying up or obtaining things relevant to anomalous primates, crypto primates, either because he like had a real secret interest in it, or there is a claim that he was one of those like evangelical, extremely right wing weirdos that you guys have, and the and was buying up this stuff to destroy it. So I looked into that and found that while I believe he was a God fearing man, he wasn't of that kind of little cult or sect that like actually believes that stuff, that would that would think that you should be destroying fossils or
Yeah, I don't think that quite started yet. That version of evangelicalism. Um,
They
it's more of like
because
a
mm,
'70s post thing.
because we had like
yes.
Scope's monkey trial like
Yeah.
conservatives, but you're right that they're not as the same as like the young Earth conservatives, right? And they weren't as like organized.
Well, they were responding. They have to respond to the order of evidence that makes it out through SciComm, right? So there's not enough to be overwhelmingly convincing in the public in the 40s and 50s during the Scopes monkey trial. It's all very academic, explaining evolution. But like as the body of evidence grows and science's ability to communicate it or put it in the media grows, they have to change their tactics, right? So like that's why like Ark Encounter or everything has to show dinosaurs, has to show Australopithecus, they have to recontextualize those things because the visuals are so strong, you can't get them out of the public's mind, right? So
Mm.
like every reactionary movement has to have a new apologetic, but that's a whole
Mm.
separate topic. Um, But
So
yeah,
the
it's
point is the finger is a human hand. It probably belonged to some monk, right? That
yeah.
yeah, it was just like a relic, like a saintly relic.
But the scalp, 100% didn't wasn't owned by any human. It's not human.
The scalp of Kom Jong. Kom
So
Jong.
we can say for sure it's not human. However, it's from a goat.
That was
It's
the
not from a
crazy
goat.
thing.
It's not from a goat.
It was from a Himalayan
It's
Suro.
from a seral, which is not a goat.
Okay, it's not a goat. It's not a goat. It's a goat. It's a goat-like mountain fellow.
It's an
Yeah, it's a-
antelope-like creature.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes,
it's
they're
not.
part of the goat answer, the Ovi caprini. Yes. So,
Yes.
but yeah, so it's interesting. Now, this is cool because the scalp is for some reason stitched in such a way that it's got kind of like a midline crest with
Mhm.
sort of like erectile hairs projecting upwards along this crest, and that has become a canonical thing that. This idea that Yetis have like a conical head with this midline crest. So we know that Hoovermans in the 50s again is advising Hergé. Hergé's like includes the Yeti in Tintin in Tibet, and that's quite an influential look for the Yeti. And not only does it have Shipton feet, it's also with the distinctive configuration of toes from the 1951 photo. Hergé's Yeti has also got the midline crest, the conical headed look. So Hoovermans looked at the hair pattern on the scalp and said that it can't be that of a primate head. It's got to be that of the hide of a hoofed mammal of some kind, and found out that it was a seral. And that's in On the Track of Unknown Animals.
I
First
love
published
that
19...
this thing is so iconic and important, and like it changes the way people do the art. People still draw the Yeti as white, even though this hair is not white. Like they're like, whatever.
What was crazy to me, Miles, is the fact that this was disproven so long ago. Like I saw like a zoologist, Marilyn Perkins, in the 1960s conclude that it is not scalp tissue at all, that it's been fabricated from a hide. Like that like that's not new information. Like, and Monster Quest just decides to ignore that. Like shut
Well,
up.
that's what. Well, Hoovermans is saying that in the 50s. So in the canonical book establishing the reality, like the main dossier for the Yeti is in Hoovermans' book. Hoovermans himself says that, hey guys, ignore that bit of evidence. It's not part of the canon.
Man.
Well, I can tell you in the 90s when I went to the library and got all these books that were mostly printed from the 70s, I believed it. I didn't know it was disproven. Like
when
the
I
book,
saw this in 2009, I was like, how come we don't test the DNA of that scalp? And
I
it was
was like,
well,
I was like, let's go get that scalp. Let's smuggle it out. I don't fucking care. We're gonna find this scalp and we're gonna prove the Yeti, right? That was
right.
that was my feeling as like a 9-year-old boy reading about the damn thing.
Like, it's
I
so
think there's more than-
strange that they keep bringing it up after such a long time. Like, that's so strange to me.
Well, what else are you gonna bring up?
I guess, like, don't you feel like dishonest? Like, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's weird. What are you going to do? Like, I think it's fine to say at one time people thought this was legit, but pretty soon they realized it wasn't. But you should say that very early on.
Yeah.
And certainly mention it at some point in the TV show.
Instead of what did they? Yeah, I'm thinking more of the foot, the finger, but yeah, the show keeps it like, oh, it's authentic.
So for the last 2 decades, we don't really have any great new Yeti evidence, right?
Yeah.
There's a video, but it's pretty obviously a hoax video. You can find it on YouTube. Not worth discussing too much. There's
the Snowwalker footage.
Yeah.
Love it.
I don't think too many people find that compelling. Cryptozoology Reddit doesn't even find it that compelling. So
Jeff thought it was real.
Well,
But yes. Yeah. Say no more.
Yeah, I asked Jeff if he thought if he found a footprint known by a known hoaxer would change the probability if he thought the footprint was real or not, and he said no. So, what can you do? Yeah, and then there's the polar bear thing with the DNA. I forget the exact. You know what I'm talking about, Trey?
Yeah,
like unknown bear subspecies.
That large genetic study where they sampled tons and tons of Bigfoot and Yeti supposed samples, and one of them was polar bear, like a rare subspecies of polar bear or something like that. I'm trying to remember.
So this is the study I was talking about. It's It's embarrassing I've forgotten his name because actually he's died, but it's Sykes, 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 and another author, and they say that off the bat, and this is partly what inspired me to talk about the Reinhold Messner bear hypothesis, because they say that they have verified that because they have found that in Yeti DNA samples, they have found that it's a bear, but it's a new kind of bear. It's a bear that represents ancient hybridization events between polar bears and brown bears that live in the Himalayas, and that this is still big news because it's a new kind of bear that no one has found before, and it gets loads of publicity. And in some of the initial press reports, press releases, and such press packages, there's a reconstruction by an artist that shows a new kind of like man bear pig, a sort of like humanoid bear. Like we found, hey guys, we found a bear.
So this is the same thing with the eel, right? They're like, oh, giant eel and lock confirmed.
And then they realized that was a mistake, and it's like, no, guys, we're just saying it's like if it's going to be a cross between a polar bear and a brown bear, even if it happened however many tens of thousands of years ago, even if it's relatively oldish, it should still look like a bear. And so the artwork then gets changed and looks more bear-like. That is then again sort of latched onto by a lot of people. Yeah, like you just said, sort of mystery solved. However, this entire endeavor, their gee whiz thing is like we've hey guys, Yeti might not be giant big monkey, but it is still a big deal. It's still a new kind of bear. Two separate projects published by two different teams of authors of like normal working technically qualified mammalogists got interested in this, and they both went to the gene bank bear samples that Sykes and colleague, it's annoying I've forgotten the names, but that they used, and they looked at the database entries. Show us where you got this, like how did you determine that this was a polar bear brown bear hybrid? And it's like, well, here's the, you can find the specific samples in gene bank, and they had accidentally read from the lower one step down in the table, and they weren't finding the DNA of like any, there was no evidence for hybridization. They'd kind of misread the data that they were using, and so they found actually bear DNA in the Himalayas. They had not found like a new kind of hybrid, because like the polar bears are very closely related to the group of, specifically, the grizzly bear is a subset of the brown bear, right? And within grizzly bears there's a subset associated with a set of Alaskan islands, I think the Pribilofs or something like that, and polar bears are a subset of grizzly bears related to those, or at least that's the model that most bear experts think. Not everyone does, but that's a popular model. And where they're saying that we've got bear DNA in the Himalayas that's related to polar bears, well, it's like that would be completely surprising, and so surprising because it's a mistake. Two studies both showing that you found brown bear DNA in alleged Yeti samples, but it's not grizzly bear. It's nothing to do with Alaskan grizzly bears. It's nothing to do with polar bears. It's like regular Asian Himalayan brown bears, and obviously we know there's a couple of different kinds of Asian brown bears in that part of the world. So yeah, there's a fun spin on that study.
To the Monster Quest episode itself. So basically, we got to do the Monster Quest thing, Trey.
Yeah, we'll finish.
Monster Quest.
Monster Quest.
Monster Quest.
There we go.
Certain Monster Quest.
Thank you, kindly. Okay, so
let's start.
Witnesses around the world report seeing monsters. Are they real or imaginary? Science searches for answers on Monster Quest.
In this episode of Monster Quest, of course, we're looking for the Yeti. This is what happened. We see Coleman show up, of course. Coleman, who won't come on our show. He says that they're said to hunt yaks and sometimes people. they are going to actually go up into the Himalayas and look for the thing. Which, like I said, that's cool. They're going out there, right? Like, it's more legitimate than a lot of these shows. Their basic plan is they are going to send two groups out. One group going to go up 15,000 feet and take a big helium balloon with a thermal scanner, look around, see if they can get thermal images of, I guess, a bipedal creature, I suppose. And then they have and that group, cat just jumped on my keyboard. Cat, I'm reading my notes. You don't want this coffee. Ripley, get out of here. See, you can't trust these animals. Okay, I love you, sweetie. Okay, sorry. Just
No,
jumped
you're
right in.
good.
You silly
What?
creature. Okay, so the expedition is led by Adam Davies, who is a big,
yes.
Bigfoot guy. He's on tons of different, he's on Yeti Massacre, Searching for Sasquatch, Sullivan Creek Sasquatch, Unexplained Files, Monster Quest, Is It Real, American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster, tons of stuff, right? I think one of his claims to fame is he has an Ouray Pindac footprint, allegedly, that a lot of the cryptozoology nerds really like. So, you want to say something about him, Darren? I'm fighting my cats right now. Bruce, get out.
I've got cats. My office is a cat-free zone. I know Adam pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I like him. Get on with him, but I do think he sensationalizes. In case it's not really obvious. Yeah. So and I also think that he's one of these people that is interested in collecting data and then does try and kind of like pass it along to the right parties to have it analyzed. So I'm not aware of an orang pendek footprint he's got, but I do know that he collected some hairs that were suspected to be from an orang pendek and did initially look really interesting. I have a manuscript, a technical manuscript that was written on those.
I think the orang pendek has a slightly better chance of being something than most of these things, for what it's worth. Very small chance, but I mean, like, slightly more realistic. Because it's not so big, I think helps it. But regardless, so he leads up there, and then there's Dr. Ian Redmond, who's a zoologist,
Who's always taking his shirt off in the episode,
Yeah.
Miles.
This guy
He's like
seems
the
very
only. He's the only one taking his shirt off too. Like every else's shirt, every his shirt's on. He's like, I'm whipping it off, man. I don't care. Like,
Do you know who Ian Redmond is outside of this?
Yeah, he's very legit.
Primatologist. He does like research with gorillas.
Yeah, a lot of work
Have
with
you
gorillas.
seen? Yeah, have you seen Gorillas in the Mist?
Yes, Gorillas in the Mist. Yeah, classic.
Yeah, he's one of Diane Fossey's proteges, and he's played by an actor in the movie. But he gives talks on what it was like to work with Diane Fossey, and he does a lot of great conservation work. But I know him pretty well. He's also like a big crypto primate advocate.
Well, I knew him from, because I don't know if you have those in Europe, but we have those DK eyewitness books.
Yeah, we have those.
Okay, yeah. So he did the
Doyle & Kinnersey's a British company, dude.
Oh, I don't know, man. I got him at the
Based in
local
London.
library in California. That's all they are to me. But he did the one that's the gorillas, monkeys, and ape ones I had as a kid. So yeah, he's legit. After watching this, I think he's a little wild and crazy. But so his plan, he actually doesn't believe they'll live way above the snow level, right? Because he doesn't think that they would have enough vegetation, running water up there, because that makes sense. So the expedition goes up to the 15,000 feet. He stays below and looks at the area where there's actually greenery and running water, and he runs around there looking for evidence. Interestingly, he finds, I know it's not a ram, but whatever the ram species that lives up there looking creature, he finds a dead one. And probably the most interesting part of the whole Monster Quest, he actually eats some of it. Like, its bones are there, and it's like
classic Ian. Yeah,
it's like rotting.
Classic Ian.
He picks up a bone. It looks like it's from his rib, and he just starts eating it.
He is like a goofy character. Like he's like the real deal. Like where he's like you're right. Like he's like a joke character that you'd see on like a TV show.
He seems legit, but he has a very interesting charisma, I'd say. And also interestingly, like they find some scat, and they cut up the scat, and then they're like, okay, this is obviously like a herbivore, and not a predator. But which is funny because they're like, oh, maybe this is Yeti, we can't identify it. But often in this Monster Quest they talk about the Yeti killing and like hunting yaks and killing yaks, but now all of a sudden he's not a predator, you know. So
Mm.
like they kind of do that with a lot of evidence. So like it could be either or. Like we found something that it must be related to the Yeti. So yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, so the crew that goes up north, with Adam Davies, they have to haul up this giant thing of hydrogen.
It looked painful. It
Yeah,
was
so the
helium canister.
helium, not hydrogen, of course, helium. Yeah, man, he could barely lift it. They had like the guys packing it, and it looked rough. But they actually climb. It looked like they put some work in. But the thing that sucks is they get to the base camp, Trey, right?
Hmm.
Where they're gonna set up this balloon, and they're pumping up all these balloons, and then what happens, buddy?
The helium had escaped the canister. There must have been a
Yeah.
leak, so they have no helium, and so like they're up there and they're like, we lugged this whole thing up here for nothing. Like, and the guy in the tank top basically is like, all right, we're gonna DIY it, and he like gets sodium hydroxide and then I quote Nepalese mystery powder and like
Yep.
mixes it together inside this canister and like it starts creating hydrogen, probably with some other stuff. I doubt it's probably like
This
probably
is
some
this is
nasty chemicals.
a real Walter White solution.
I
This
wrote down that this is Breaking Bad. Like they're up like up on the mountain, like making crappy chemistry out of like the random stuff that just happened to be nearby to
I would
float
pay
a
to watch a
balloon.
Walter White look for the Yeti episode. By the way, I would.
Walter White would probably catch the Yeti.
He would find it.
He'd fight. He'd gun it down with the.
Yeah.
He'd drive his car up there. Like the back of the car.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so like you
anyways,
have to make like a half-ass version of the balloon, basically.
yeah, and it like barely floats. It like goes like maybe like
And
50 feet up and then goes back down. And they do it during like the daytime, right? Like it's
yeah, I don't know.
a big waste. It wasted everybody's time because like they basically just lifted it up just for it to record them down there, and then it goes back down, and that's it.
And no surprise to anyone, they did not find the Yeti or anything really that interesting. They do find some bear tracks, and I like the line. It was the most common misidentification of Yeti tracks is bear tracks, which I thought should have told
Probably.
them something. It's like you might want to think about that a little more, put that together.
The episode I won't talk about it that much, but the episode talks about Nazis hunting for the Yeti. Miles,
Yeah.
if you thought that was interesting at all, that there was like a Ernst Schaefer. This is Messer, right? Talking about this, and it's kind of like supporting his bear thing, where there was like a 1939 Tibet expedition that had many purposes according to the Nazis. Like I think Himmler helped fund it, but part of it was to find the Yeti for either that they believed that Tibet was like the cradle of humanity, like that it was like where humans.
The Aryan race, yeah, the Aryans evolved in the high mountainous sunlight,
Yes.
and so they wanted to they wanted to demonstrate that, and they thought also that I must be very difficult not sorry must be very careful not to use any of the racist terms that they'd like to use, but they thought that other kinds of people had moved in once the Aryans had gone away, and that they could demonstrate that by craniometrics. So there's lots of like measurements taken of Tibetan people's skulls and whatnot. And then I think that if the Yeti was found, it was kind of like a fun side project.
Yeah,
they weren't
that's
thinking that
correct,
the Yeti was kind of like going to be the ultimate ancestor of like the Aryan race or something.
Okay,
Hot-
I'm
hot-
happy
hot-
you're here because Monster Quest gave that as the idea that they would find the Yeti, and the Yeti would be the Aryan master race, like
Yeah,
example
Yeah.
or something. Like yeah,
I always think it's a bit of a cheap shot. I mean, don't get me wrong, not exactly a fan of the Nazis, but they weren't like it's pinning Yeti search like on a Nazi expedition doesn't negate interest in the Yeti, which is what again some kind of like some skeptical authors have
yeah.
kind of tried to do, sort of in order to straw man it, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of
So-
mysticism in early Nazis. Like Eckhart, like really believed in like Atlantis and all this stuff. Because
Miles, I wrote down that I was kind of realizing that this is like Conan with the years between the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Aries. Like I was like, oh,
yes,
like
yeah,
this is their worldview at the time. Like this is before out of Africa and like Australopithecus fossils became like well known. Like this was the standard that most people assumed, that there was like this weird cultures migrating into new areas, and that like they originated in the north as opposed to in Africa. Yeah, and that Atlantis was real, you know. Yeah.
But yeah, hot take. I don't really trust Himmler.
No.
And his views on
that's a hot
yeah,
take, Miles.
Hitler's like quoted as saying that like all he does is bring me back mud huts, you know, because he
Yes,
was like looking for some like special Aryan like claim to founding quote unquote civilization, and like Himmler was not very successful at that or anything really because he's a little fuck. Hot take, yeah, but
so
but regardless, yeah, they bring up that, and they do have the other mountaineer on the Monster Quest episode who is pretty much like, yeah, there's no Yeti, guys. What the fuck are you talking about?
yeah, that's about it.
And
They
that was
found like
Reinhold. Reinhold, by the way, is who said that on the show.
they saw the like what like the only other thing I think a note is that like there was a trackway, right? They thought it was a trackway in the snow, and it was just like a thing of snowfall and like a snowball.
Yeah, it was a snowfall, and then the local people knew what it was right away.
So
you could tell Adam was very excited when they saw the snowfall, like, oh, found footprints, but unfortunately, it wasn't.
but
So
yeah, that's about it. They didn't find much. They didn't find much.
it
Like
was
that.
an hour and 30 long Monster Quest, so you thought maybe this would be a very exhaustive one, and they did put effort in. Like I said, they spent the money, they went on a quest, they didn't find anything. That's not their fault. They didn't find anything. There is no Yeti, so you can't necessarily blame them for that. But yeah, it wasn't the most entertaining episode, unfortunately. But I think they tried. So.
Yeah, they did try.
Darren didn't watch
so
it.
Ian,
so.
no, sorry, I haven't
okay.
seen it.
It's
I
okay,
really
brother.
wish
It's
I.
right.
Yeah. So Ian Redmond didn't find anything cool in the lower altitude
Other than a
gullies
snack,
and...
he found a snack. he literally ate the flesh of this dead animal.
He ate the flesh of this like rotting, jerky looking thing, and then just and sat there. Right, he slept next to it so you could see if something would come back. All right, that's commitment.
It's always a good idea.
He was trying to be legitimate. He took a very small team because he didn't want to make a lot of noise. He walked along the area where there was like lots of, it's not lichen, I don't know what they have there, but lichen looking stuff growing, and like thought, okay, this was a habitat where some kind of ape could live based on his experience with gorillas and stuff, I assume. And he tried. He was quiet and he slept there, looked near streams and looked. He just didn't find an ape. So yeah. But I think I do not think he believes in the Yeti, but I think he was trying to, put some earnest work into it. So.
Oh, I've spoken to him about this stuff. I think he is a believer.
Oh, interesting.
In all the classic crypto primates. So
interesting. I tried to look it up, his opinion on the Yeti, and I couldn't really find a concrete yes or no. So, but
no, I only know about this from like Facebook chats and talking about it with him face to face.
Interesting.
So I don't think he's written anything down.
He did say in the episode that what is his quote? It says if it was just mythology, there'd be no tracks. But I was like, well, yeah, but you're putting the mythology on the tracks, or in some cases, you're making the tracks to make the mythology, like Eric Shipton might have done. So it's like, I don't know, man. Just I find footprints to be this thing that looks very objective, but is actually very subjective. Like it looks like this really good bit of evidence because it's like, oh, this is a physical thing. You can touch it, you can weigh it, you can measure it. So this is like actually relevant, but like it's very impressionistic. It's somewhat easy to fake. People who are experts in footprints, I believe, have been hoaxed and believe things that aren't true about them all the time. Jeff Meldrum, for example, said that the dermal ridges could not be replicated. And like 10 years ago, somebody showed the casting process could actually make artifacts that could be articulated as dermal ridges. And even Jeff accepted that was possible. So like,
yes,
yeah,
he did. Yes,
yeah.
When Matt Crawley,
Crawley.
brilliant investor. Yeah. And I understand that on seeing that evidence, Jeff Meldrum actually stood up at whatever meeting it was and said, I think you've like slam dunked it, congratulations.
Yeah.
But then kind of changed his mind and still supported some of the dermatoglyphics as if they were legit. But yes, I think that's a really good explanation. I've seen, thanks to visiting Cliff Barackman in Oregon, I've seen the tracks that include the famous alleged dermatoglyphics, the wrinklefoot tracks and the dermal ones. There's a really interesting book that's been published late last year by two guys called Jamie Lewis and Andrew Bartlett, who are, I think they're like cultural sociologists or cultural historians. It's Bigfooters and Scientific Inquiry, it's called, and it's basically a really deep and I'm sorry, so Bigfoot more than Yeti, but it's still relevant. It's the first good academic large scale study of what Bigfooters are doing. Like, what are they, collecting? How are they sort of building? It's about like how there's a whole branch of the study of science called, or is it's called like knowledge making, or how people make knowledge claims, and that's what they're interested in. It's like, how are people building the knowledge they think is relevant to the field? And obviously a huge chunk of it is people who think, breathe, eat, sleep Bigfoot are basically looking at an absence of evidence and finding a way of turning that into evidence. So like hollows in the ground are like an absence of evidence, but if you are working in a paradigm where they have to be footprints, then you're working really hard to make that shape into a footprint, because that is that's the paradigm you're working within. And if you were to try and bring someone into the fold when they're not thinking along those lines, you've got quite a lot of work to do, because like the current thinking among Bigfoot proponents is that Bigfoot tracks all of the sort of like, not all, but they think that a big chunk of the sort of like real famous, like Bluff Creek ones and Bossberg, Cribblefoot and stuff that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, those aren't real. That's not what real Bigfoot footprints look like. The real ones are way more amorphous. They're sort of real, kind of like blurry, like shapeless hollows in the ground. In other words, exactly the kinds of structures that exist in the natural world and aren't made by animals' feet.
Oh yeah, convenient.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Miles, speaking of giant footprints, I looked up that 2019 Indian Army picture.
Yes.
I didn't realize that we're talking about footprints that are like 4 feet or 3 feet like long, like that. We're talking about like giant, like we're talking like a giant Yeti. We're talking like 20-foot tall Yeti, 10-foot tall Yeti, something like that, right? Like to make a footprint that big.
Yeah,
what are we
BBC
talking
News
about?
reported on them, so these are real. So
what? See, that's always confusing to me when there's people that are like, there's not just like Bigfoots out there, but there's Bigfoots that are like 9-10 feet tall. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what?
Yeah, you of course know this, but this story gets some cryptozoology people would actually just agree with you, be like, yeah, it's obviously not Yeti, doesn't fit our profile. But there's the subset, and Darren brought this up earlier, of like these group of people who believe in this stuff for like theological reasons,
For
right?
Nephilim stuff.
Well, to them,
right.
it's a giant, right?
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Giants prove the Bible, or
that makes more sense, Miles. That this people would use this as Nephilim thing. Oh gosh, yeah.
Which is just another pile of fucking
yeah.
So
the red-headed giant of Candy Heart.
Yeah. So, Miles, what's our opinion of this Monster Quest episode? What are we thinking?
I'm gonna give them an 8 for trying.
8.
So this is why. They put a legitimate effort into going out and doing some kind of cryptozoology thing that resembles this kind of science. They got a zoologist who is credible in his own way, and he did almost like a control kind of the other group. He went in a different direction, and I respect them for that. Like, it's not the most interesting episode, but maybe I'm biased a bit from watching the new Monster Quest, which just is like a scam, you know, and remembering that they used to go out. But I respect that they went out, so I'm going to give it an 8, which is maybe a bit high. But
You've kind of convinced me. You're right that they did go out of the way to get legitimate people. That like the fact they got Ian Redmond, and then they lugged that helium tank up there, and they actually
well,
went
they
to
paid a guy to do it.
they paid a guy to do it. The one thing that I would be upset with is the fact that they're repeating outdated information. I always really don't like that when a series does that. When like the scalp thing, like the fact that you're repeating that after like 75 years of us knowing that it's not true,
Well,
or
it's like
not 75, like 50 or
if
60
they go
or something.
to the lock, they bring up the surgeon's photo, and maybe they'll debunk it at the 38-minute time, but they always bring it up first.
Yeah.
It's like, why, man? It's like,
This wasn't even debunked too. They just brought it up just to bring it up. So like that's always that is one of my pet peeves when like because you have to like do that knowingly, right? Like unless you're just really not doing it. Either you're not trying or you're doing it knowingly. Like either you're not doing enough research to know that in the 60s and 50s these famous people in cryptozoology are calling these things out as not true and a waste of our time. Or you're willfully like lying, like you're like you're like obscuring that information. But anyway, so I'll take a point off for that. I'll do 7 bags of popcorn
okay.
and a
So
nice
out of the 76 episodes of Monster Quest, this is ranked
yeah
40th.
40th.
40th. So it's just right
Middle
below
of the pack.
Mystery Ape Island and just above Sierra Sasquatch. So it's in a
Huh.
group of ape ones. So it's kind of a middling episode for the show.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at like the YouTube comments on it, most people just say they miss these kind of shows, or they will say, "I know a guy who knows a guy who went to Nepal and he says the Yeti is real." Those are the most common. Or someone makes a Yeti joke. A lot of Yeti puns. So, yeah, I think the Yeti has somewhat lost some hope in the cryptozoology space of being real, and I think most of the interest has looked back to the Americas for Bigfoot, and Bigfoot has kind of taken over. I think there's less interest in actually looking in the Himalayas for this creature nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was always disappointed that for something that you think would be more plausible, I mean as a sort of naive young person, you'd like, yeah, come on, surely the Yeti is legit. Bigfoot, I can't believe that. But yeah, if anything, the evidence, air quotes, that exists for Bigfoot has, there's some of it, and yeah, Yeti, it's based on the same 3 things: Gigantopithecus, the shipped in 1951 photo, and local lore.
Yeah,
And
the
yeah, you
lore
don't
is
have.
very quote unquote, right? Like, yeah, because like I said, a lot of the stories they do things. Like if you look at the Nanuke stories, they're like they do things like in reverse of humans. They have like reverse footprints, and you can trick them, and like they're like folktale creatures, right? They're obviously not talking about a real creature. So I don't know.
I do like that. Sorry, I do really like that story about that young woman. She's not a young woman now, but she was a young woman at the time who says that she saw a yeti like kill one of her yaks, and she's been interviewed. Now, this doesn't mean anything. I'm saying I like it. I'm not saying I buy it or I believe it. She's been interviewed, and if she's acting really well. And there's one documentary where they have someone prank her, like jump out in a Yeti costume or something. And
that sounds mean.
What a mean thing to do. That's awful.
Yeah. She's really unhappy.
They reenact that in the Monster Quest, of course.
Yeah, in the Monster Quest, like they talk about how the thing that attacked her was 5 feet tall, so it's like a little Yeti.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
kind
with reddish brown fur, more like
kind of short for a Yeti. Yeah, it's 5 feet tall. Is the details related to this?
And also, of course, there's the Himalayan bears, right, in the area. Yeah, so that's plausible explanation, I assume. But yeah,
but the idea that I'm taller than a Yeti is kind of crazy. Like like that I could look down on a Yeti is kind of weird. Like, what are we talking about? I guess it's a baby Yeti. Is that your argument, Miles?
Well, I think so. That this going back to there being several creatures that go by this name. So again, Hooverman's on the Chuck of Animals. He says that the canonical Yeti is I think it's the one called the Mete, the one that he suggests should be called Deinanthropoides nivalis. It needs a scientific name,
Yeah.
and he describes that as obviously his stuff is translated from the French, and he describes it as youth-sized. So he's implying that it's not like a 6 foot tall big man, but that it's whatever a youth is. I mean, there can be a youth that's like over 6 foot
Two
tall.
youths.
So maybe in some corners of cryptozoology, maybe the Yeti was imagined as not particularly tall.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Which is against the canonical view, because we're always thinking of it as a giant hulking thing that's nearly as wide as it is tall.
Well, that's just the more artistic, poetic version of it. That's what we want. We want there to be like this uber man of the wild that's untamed. We want that, and so we're going to make it into it, regardless of what the evidence or quote unquote evidence says. I find it interesting about like the Bigfoot Yeti divide is like Yeti is more probabilistic, just like from a Bayesian sense, because like it's not in the New World, right? Like there are apes here, like apes could walk there, apes could be there. Like the whole Bigfoot thing, and they never really respond to very well, other than bring up land bridge Japan to get this black is. I'm like, well, there's no New World apes, man. Like, and they're like, oh well, but there are apes in this region ish, so like it is more probabilistic in that sense. But other than that, I don't think they've kind of run out of evidence and sightings and arguments. I think so. I guess the Yeti is he's on ice.
We killed him. We killed him like we did.
Yeah.
We did Bigfoot. Oh.
Yeah, I unfortunately, like I said, like it's kind of the sad part about this show or in cryptozoology. A lot of these creatures are very exciting when you're young, and some people believe in them and then don't believe in them and leave it at that. I think for us, we have continued to find the hunt for them to be informative, the culture around them to be interesting, and I see it as this break between like this Darwinistic worldview and then like how you go forward with that. Like when there's time when it's like people without scientific expertise could discover things, and where we were really learning what evolution meant and what like what the natural world, how it could be described, and like people just want to be able to find things without, like I said, like specialties. And like it's kind of sad, I guess, that it's become more difficult to find new animals, and like this love of cryptozoology is kind of in that place emotionally. And so that's why I think it's still a good thing to talk about and explore, although unfortunately our heroes, Loch Ness, Bigfoot, Yeti, Jersey Devil, whatever, they're not out there, but them being in our hearts is still a good place for them. So
I agree. I like yes, they still live on in our hearts. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you have any final way to utilize you I can't speak. Do you have any final eulogy for the Yeti, Darren?
Not really. I mean,
Didn't know the guy. Whatever.
I think it has always played an integral. Like we said this already. It's always played an integral role in our, like imagining of what that part of the world is like, which is important. And I think I've said this for many monsters already. This partly explains the phenomenon of expectant attention. If a person of our culture thinks of a giant rugged mountain range in a wild part of the world, there's a set of things you're imagining, and one of the things is a giant hairy wild person. That's kind of like an inescapable part of our culture, which is never going to go away. I think it's super interesting. And then it's good that such places kind of still do exist, and at a time when if you look at any information about the Himalayas, there's all these horrible stories about how there's like 12 tons of human feces left on the side by mountaineers, and there's like 6,000 spent gas cylinders, all that kind of stuff. Clearly we have a massive footprint on that environment due to our interest in it, but so long as we still like hold on to the possibility that there might be like monstrous unknown creatures there, that is a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, like it's interesting because like I know some stories about, from folklore in this region, which I had never known. I would have never looked up or never heard of, if I didn't think there was a large, hairy creature, part man, part ape, living there as a kid. Because that idea is just so awesome, and like so in some way, some like Western California kid got to learn something about a culture he's not part of. I suppose there's a little bit of like exoticism going on there, but it is a way for people to get a foothold, however imperfect, into learning about different places, which can inspire like actual respect, once you learn about the real thing. So that can be a possible positive of cryptozoology. So
I like that as well. I like the fact that there must be a good chunk of humanity that only got started reading about exotic animals of the Orient and apes and fossil apes because of the cryptids acting as like gateway drugs, hooks
yeah,
to get
yeah.
to build some
The
interest
the
in that.
Yeti is the weed of anthropology.
You don't hear say that often. To be fair, I'm wondering. It's quite common to hear scientists of all kinds say they became interested in science because of things like dinosaurs and
Yeah,
space travel. Whereas, are there people that are naturalists or conservationists that started thinking about Bigfoot and Yeti, and that inspired further interest? I'm not sure. I'd be interested in
yeah.
checking that out.
Me too.
Well, regardless, we really thank you for coming on the show, Darren.
Yeah, Darren, you're always like an amazing source of knowledge, like and
Yeah,
perspective on this kind of stuff.
I talk a lot of crap as well, though. Yeah.
yeah, that's all right.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed talking to
Yeah,
you both. Thank
Oh,
you.
it's always
thank
good to
you.
have well researched people. And I always just wing everything. So
You know you don't. You do a little bit of research.
it's
We
okay.
both do research.
I'm a novice. You guys have bona fides. I don't have shit. But I do my best. I do my best. But it was great having you on. Thanks everybody for following this Monster Quest journey with us. Hopefully, one of you will find an unknown animal someday, and if not,
Unlikely.
at least we have this community. Anyways, good luck, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. There's a lot of